Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé, The Single Life, Tell All. Let's watch.
He'd be like, I never ask you for anything. I never ask you for anything. But like he would in ways that weren't as overt as like me saying, like, I don't like your drinking habits. Please change them. It would be every day. I'm bored. What are we doing? Like, I was drinking a lot more. I was trying to party a lot more. I was trying to.
Okay, that's interesting. We're hearing a background that we didn't get, that she's saying that every day or frequently he would say, I'm bored, what are we going to do? Entertain me. And she's thinking, well, I want to do productive things and you want to do fun things and you can't do fun things on your own and you need me to do fun things with you and you don't have any friends, and which of course makes sense. I mean, he just moved there from across the globe, but it does lend itself to that mother-child dynamic, right? That sounds the way a child is to a mother. I'm bored, entertain me. And the mother's like, oh, I've got to do these other things, but okay. And not that that's pathological, of course, but it does fit in line. And then we heard him earlier saying that the best or the worst thing about breaking up was the fact that he had to pay his own bills. Like, that's kind of interesting, right? Because if y'all have been through a breakup and you had to pay, you start living on your own again, I'm just going to guess and say that most of you didn't have that feeling. You're just like, yeah, you just pay your bills. What's the big deal? So it's particular. And I always wonder, because she would complain a lot about him being like a child and being irresponsible. And I did wonder if we just weren't getting all the data and we just got a little bit of a glimpse there.
Make him happy,
What did you change about yourself for the relationship, Syngin?
I didn't change myself much. For me, I stay the same through I am. So, yeah.
I would say that he did change in the beginning in that he either lied to himself or he fluctuated over time in his desire to have children, because in the beginning he was giving the impression that children were something in the near future. And as time went on, it became more of an amorphous thing until the point where he was almost saying he never wanted kids, if I remember right. And so I think that is one of those things. But, good on him for saying, I didn't really change that much. Now, I think that's part of his identity. He likes to know that he is who he is, and he likes that.
You should change who you are in relationships, but as you get older, you make compromises in, certain behaviors. So you can't just party, drink every day, and you can't, expect your partner to keep up with a super fast lifestyle if you're trying to work and make money and support each other.
Yeah, and you aren't your behaviors. Behaviors can be changed.
It's a simple solution.
Well, so they're getting into, I'm guessing there's a simple solution. We just aren't married. So what Stephanie is saying is that you shouldn't have to change for your partner. It's a very nuanced thing. On one hand, yes, you shouldn't change your identity. Like, if you are a vegan, you shouldn't, and you're really, dedicated to that, you shouldn't have to eat meat to be with someone, that kind of thing. Or you shouldn't have to act like you're an introvert when you're an extrovert, or you shouldn't have to become a Republican if you're not a Republican or something, because if you have to change who you are, then, you're being asked too much, or you're giving up too much, and you're going to resent it, or you're not really presenting the real you to the other person. You don't have a firm identity yourself. Yeah, that's all true. And we could go on and on about that topic. It's pretty complicated. But on the other hand, research shows that good relationships that are satisfactory and last a long time, people do change in ways they don't even necessarily realize. They change the way they talk, they change their attitudes, they change their viewpoints, they change their political views. People change, and it's either conscious or unconscious. But good relationships, you tend to meet in the middle, or you each, it's like, okay, I'll be like his political view, and I'll be like her food eating practices, and people start having the same sense of humor, the same kinds of activities, and preferring them. It makes sense because we evolved to couple and be in relationships and to be adaptable. And in order to have harmony and activities that you can do together, it would serve us all if we can be naturally adjusting to the other person. So people will say, oh, it's like being a chameleon, or it's changing who you are. And it's like, no, it's just research shows that's what we do naturally, whether we know it or not. And it obviously has its function. So that's the other thing, is that I will say that we all change and should change. We should question changing and make sure that we're okay with the change, but we should and do all change in quality, healthy, long-term relationships. Then Tania takes what Stephanie is saying, and she's still in that space of, because Stephanie says, well, you need to, if you're going out partying all the time, you need to stop doing that. No, you don't. I'm guessing for a lot of people, you're not going to want your partner to go out and party all the time, but that's not inherently what you have to do in a relationship. That's what Tania wanted him to do, but to imply that somehow he had to change for her is not correct. A lot of people are not going to agree with me on this and say, well, how are you going to party all the time and make a relationship work? You can make it. If two people party or one person parties all the time and it just doesn't interfere in their life or doesn't interfere to a significant degree and they have a secure attachment, then it's fine. Can partying all the time and drinking all the time lead to a lot of bad things? Yeah, absolutely. But a lot of things can. If you go golfing all the time or read a lot of books or, I don't know, mountain biking, you can, crack your head open, on trails and stuff. So, the cultural notion of you need to stop drinking in order, or you need to stop your free lifestyle, your very free-spirited lifestyle, is imposed on this relation. And Stephanie is imposing that. It's not an inherent truth that he was the one who had to change for the relationship to work. The other thing is she drank a lot. Now I think, and she did in the season, she's saying, I even drank more because he drinks all the time. And that's something that they didn't go into a lot, but I suspect that he's drinking every day or at the very least a lot every week. And that can create problems, but it's his choice and it's not inherently going to ruin a relationship. Tania can absolutely assert, I don't want you to drink that much anymore because I don't like it and it impacts me in this way. That's fine, but it's not inherently the right thing to do. And he's not inherently wrong for not going along with that, because he could equally come back and say, I want you to drink all the time. You can make those requests. You can deny those requests, going both ways. I think most people would deny, well, I'm not going to drink as much as you, and that's fine. But it's not inherent. But Tania always would take it that way. Instead of saying, I would like it, and because this is my preference, because I believe the way she was raised, she doesn't feel as though her needs are important enough to just stand on their own, of just like, I think I have this need for closeness with you that involves not drinking, and I just want to start building for the future. That's my preference. That's not what she would say, usually. What she would say is, there's something wrong with you. And that's when he would get defensive, and that's what began the downward slide.
You should just get a chick that does that all with you.
But to find someone that fits that criteria and that you have chemistry with and that you get along with, that you're attracted to, it's a lot of boxes to check off. So,
and what's also healthy and what's not healthy.
Yeah, I mean, it might not be healthy, the amount of drinking that he does. I don't know, though. But again, it's that judgment that we hear from Tania. If this was all that I'd seen, I wouldn't know what to say. But we know what this resulted in, and we know the rigid, superior attitude that she, superior is a bad word, the I'm right attitude that she had around all of this stuff. And she wasn't terrible. She was able to adjust, and I got the impression that behind the scenes she was doing a lot of adjusting, and she was trying hard to meet him in the middle and go along with things that she was like, I don't know if I want to go that far. So I'm not saying she didn't adjust, but the where I would feel better about her is if she could say in this moment, just like, well, he likes to have a certain lifestyle that I don't like, and I just couldn't do it. And it was hard for me to deal with someone that had that lifestyle. I'm not judging his lifestyle, but it was just really hard for me to deal with. You know, if you said something like that, that'd be fine, but that's not the attitude she's saying. And of course, you know, a lot of people are going to back her up, you know, particularly her friends, right? The way that they talked, it would be like, you're right, he's wrong, instead of, you have a perfectly okay preference. And I talk about this often, that when you feel insecure, we triangulate, right? When there's tension and conflict, we will triangulate. And one of the ways that Tania will triangulate is like the truth or society. She's like, well, everyone would agree with me that you're wrong. And instead of being differentiated and just standing on your own 2 feet and saying, this is what I want. I don't like that. I'm guessing a lot of other people wouldn't like that, but maybe some people would like that. I don't know. But I know I don't like it. And so could you please? In the end, I'm guessing he still would have said no. But you have to wonder if her attitude was a major factor in him losing the motivation to try to adjust.
I think if you love someone, you can, and if you really are committed, you can compromise 100%.
So, again, who are you talking to? Are you talking to just him? Because if you're talking to just him, then that's not, you know, she could compromise too. Now, I think most of her, including myself, I would agree with Tania, but that's just me. But Syngin, can be who he wants to be. Now, if Syngin gave the wrong impression that he was going to change, which is possible, then he gave the wrong impression. He led her on. But there's also a chance that he, from the beginning, is like, no, I drink all the time. I party all the time. I'm a free spirit. I don't like to make plans. And, you know, that's just who I am. And so the way Natalie and Stephanie are talking is they're identifying with Tania and saying, you know, people need to compromise, meaning Syngin needs to compromise. Well, couldn't Tania compromise as well? And the compromise from Tania didn't have to be she drinks all the time, but she could have said, well, I'll make requests of him, but I don't want to do those things. And so how can I adjust my life around it so that he can go on whatever path that he's on around it? Now, there is a chance that his drinking was highly destructive. He was driving drunk. He was hungover all the time. He couldn't function when he, you know, was obviously drunk or hungover. And those things you can say, look, when you were drunk, this happened and this happened and this happened, and that was too much for me. You don't have to say everyone is on my side on the world. You just have to say, I don't like that. And there's a chance, because I have a feeling that when the show gets into that kind of stuff, they edit it out, because there are moments where it would make sense for that topic to come up, particularly in this relationship with Syngin, and we don't see evidence of that. I hear almost like indications of other conversations that are happening along those lines, and it doesn't really change what I'm saying, but it does obviously add to the story.
It seemed like Syngin was not committed to the relationship?
I felt that he was committed, but he didn't want to make compromises, and he cared more about his freedom than making the relationship with Tania work. Mm-hmm. He chose himself.
Not exactly right on that. Like,
yeah, that's not how I would put it. If you identify with Tania, then that's how it would seem. But from him, and I'm guessing he's going to say something along these lines of like, I loved her, I wanted to be with her, and I also wanted to be a free spirit. I wasn't going to cheat on her, I wasn't going to harm her, I wasn't going to leave her, but she didn't like the way that I thought. She didn't like the way that I lived. And she was constantly complaining about it all the time. And it was driving us apart. And she could have just relaxed a little bit and given it a try. Now, I'm not saying it would have worked out, because there could be the alcohol and the kids could have been deal breakers completely. But it wasn't just as simple as they're putting it right now, in my opinion, based on watching a TV show with limited information.
When I love somebody, I love to give. Like, I gave you a lot of affection. Like,
you gave me a lot of love and a lot of affection and a lot of attention, but Stephanie is right. You are also, and I would tell you this, you're a very selfish person. You're very loveful, and that's what, it's so hard, because I swear, it's like two people in one.
I'm selfish at staying in myself. Yeah.
But
Okay, so that's interesting, and I forgot about that. That he would be stubborn around certain things, probably around alcohol-related things, I'm guessing. And Tania would notice, like, wow, like, I'm just asking you to adjust a little bit here. How come you won't adjust a little bit? And he would get defensive. I don't know. But some people who suffer from substance abuse will find any way to keep people out of that equation, because they learn over time that if they let influence in on their substance use, it threatens their substance use, and it will cause them shame or make it inconvenient for them to use. And so they might learn to be very rigid about, we don't talk about that, or they get, I'm never going to change that. In fact, I'm going to show you today, I'm going to get super drunk and you can't do anything about it because that's just the way that things are and you're just going to deal with it. You know, I don't know if Syngin did anything like that. It doesn't really sound like him, but we can imagine him being very principled, if you will, and opinionated and stern about, you can't change me. You're trying to change me. This is who I am. You know, this is how you met me. I'm a partier. I'm a free thinker, when in reality, he's addicted to alcohol, or he needs alcohol to cope emotionally, or something along those lines. And again, it doesn't change what I said earlier, but it does, again, add to the context. Again, I have no idea about this, by the way. The reason why I talk about this is not for them, obviously. I mean, they're breaking up anyway. It's for us to think about, you know, in our own lives. If we drink a lot, or if we have someone in our life that drinks a lot, these are things that we should consider.
I'd never asked you for much other than to change a couple of your habits that you've also said aren't the healthiest. And that was the biggest thing.
So do you hear that right there? It's like, I think in normal language, I'm guessing people tell them, don't talk about the alcohol thing. Like, keep it, you know, you can talk about habits, or who knows. But she just said, we talked about you changing a habit and things that you agreed were not the healthiest of things. I'm quite sure they're talking about alcohol in that moment, right? Who knows? But it's probable. And so we're hearing from her that she was asking him to stop that, which would, you know, drinking really interferes with your life, right? When you're intoxicated, and particularly a very intoxicated, very different person. Yeah, you can't really do chores under those circumstances. You're hungover the next day. It costs a lot of money. There's danger involved. You might get angry. You might get erratic. You might get annoying. So, thoughts about career and having kids, like, you're looking at this person like, I can't have this person be a father under this. So can you cut back a little bit and show me that you can cut back? I'm a free spirit. You can't do that to me. And then when he's hungover, he's just like, oh, I need to cut back on drinking. So we can absolutely imagine that. And then in the end, mostly he's like, you're trying to change me, and stop trying to get me to change my who I am, when in reality what they're talking about is an addiction.
Like, I never ever said stop drinking. I just said, hey, can we not drink as much? Like, hey, you want to move? Can we plan just a little bit? Like, I'm down to move. Like, can we just plan that out just a little bit?
Okay, so I interrupted her. She actually just did say the D word, the drinking word. So now we see his face, and I'm going to take a guess and say, like, he's going to get defensive because he feels shame around his drinking and defensive around his drinking. I'm guessing. Let's see what he says.
Tania, we saw that Syngin wrote you a letter. Before that goodbye.
So I don't know. Maybe this is tinfoil hat kind of stuff, but the Sean changes the subject, gets him off of the drinking topic. Who knows? But it would make sense that a show like this would say, we don't want to get into the real ugly culturally parts of people's lives. Let's, the normal stuff, the cheating and the jealousy and the secret, and I once had a same-sexual relationship in the past. Let's just keep it to that kind of stuff, and to get into like real talk here, because the other thing that they don't get into, and I think it makes sense, is domestic violence. It would make, given statistics and given what we know about some of the cast members, that there would be actual intimate partner violence. We saw with Angela and Michael. And we saw with Nicole and Azan, that there was actual, but it was on the scale of visual indications of domestic violence, intimate partner violence. It was pretty low grade, but we don't see that, right? We don't see actual domestic violence relationships on the show. We don't see actual addiction. In all likelihood, a good number of these individuals, people struggling with addiction is pretty common. And I wouldn't be surprised if a good percentage of the cast members have been suffering from that, but they don't show it. There's a good chance that some of the producers have learned about some of the addiction problems, but they don't show it, right? Because they're trying to make a show that is lighter in that way, or because when it becomes real, the audience has to reckon with, oh, these are real lives. These are real, real people suffering from real things. Instead of Tammy going berserk at Kalani, it's just kind of these funny moments with not a lot of consequence. There are consequences, of course, but it doesn't feel the way it does. Anyway, so I don't know if I'm just reading into things, but I'm guessing that a central issue in their relationship was his drinking, and he is struggling and does not want to give it up and has reasons to not want to, because he does identify as a partier and a fun person and someone who likes to drink with his friends. But I'm guessing there have been moments when he has said to himself, there's something wrong. I have to cut back. I've had major consequences from this. And she was there to witness that and was, obviously had a vested interest in being on that side of things. And that was a frequent topic of conflict between the two of them. It's just my guess. It doesn't change anything I said, and it would absolutely fit with the codependency hypothesis that I had about her. Because remember, codependents aren't what the internet calls codependence. That's not what a codependent person is. A codependent person is someone who had relational traumas, being parentified and having to take care of your younger sister, perhaps, that you believe your only worth in life and your only safe place in life is when you're taking care of someone else making a mistake. And you fit very well with someone who suffers from alcohol addiction, because the person who is drinking all the time is frequently making mistakes, and you need to be taking care of that person. And you need the alcoholic to always be drinking, because if they actually get well, then your self-worth and your safety goes out the window. So you're subconsciously in this loop of like criticizing while enabling and sort of promoting drinking and finding drinkers or finding people who have self-destructive behaviors, and never feeling good about yourself, but feeling a little bit of safety when you are berating someone and they're doing what you're telling them what to do. And that would absolutely fit in this relationship, right? All right, well, that is it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.